Farmer's daughter adopted a sick dog from the shelter. They called her Hillbilly. They despised her at the clinic, but she healed a dying dog who later saved a life. From the mountains to the city, and from mockery to respect, she built a center that honors her roots and proves that love also heals. Welcome to the channel. Before we begin, like and subscribe so we can keep creating stories like this. Hope Jenkins had always been different. From a young age, in her humble home in the Appalachian Mountains of Kentucky, she saw beauty where others only saw the ordinary. The calloused hands of her grandmother, Mrs. Dorothy, the cornfields swaying in the wind, the colorful embroidery of their traditional quilts. Everything had a value that went beyond the material. Her father, Mr. Frank, a respected farmer in the region, had taught her that what truly matters is not what shines, but what endures. Words that Hope carried tattooed on her soul. When she received the acceptance letter to study veterinary medicine at the University of California in Los Angeles, her parents couldn't hold back their tears. She was the first in her family to access higher education, a dream built with daily sacrifices and nights of studying by candlelight. The day of her departure, the entire town came out to say goodbye. Her mother gave her a small jade amulet, a family heirloom that had been passed down from generation to generation. "So you never forget where you come from," she whispered in her ear while hugging her. Arriving in Los Angeles was a cultural shock that not even her worst nightmares had anticipated. Buildings rose like concrete giants, obscuring the sky that seemed infinite in her hometown. The constant noise, the cars, the rush, everything was overwhelming. Her accent revealed her origins, and although some professors valued her rural perspective on animal care, many classmates looked at her with disdain or anthropological curiosity. Her rented room in the Echo Park neighborhood was small but dignified. The walls were decorated with photographs of her family and Kentucky quilts that reminded her of her roots. During the first few weeks, Hope felt like a foreigner in her own country. It was Professor Harrison who changed the course of her university story. "Tomorrow we will conduct a voluntary practice at the municipal animal shelter," he announced in class. "It's not mandatory, but it will give you a real perspective on animal suffering and the responsibility that comes with our profession." Many students looked at each other with disinterest. Some even made mocking comments. "Why waste time with stray dogs?" commented Victoria Morgan, daughter of one of the most prestigious veterinarians in Beverly Hills, while fixing her perfectly manicured nails. But for Hope, that invitation resonated like a call of destiny. The following Saturday, only 5 students showed up at the shelter. The facilities were precarious, rusty cages, dirty feeders, and a smell that mixed cheap disinfectant with disease. The desperate barking formed a heartbreaking symphony that echoed off the peeling walls. While the other students held their breath in disgust, Hope moved naturally. She had grown up among animals, knew their fears, their body language. She didn't see repulsive creatures, but living beings who, like her, were seeking a bit of dignity in a world that turned its back on them. It was on her 3rd visit when she saw him. Secluded in a corner, almost invisible, a medium-sized dog lay motionless. His coat, which must have once been golden, was marked by mange and wounds. One of his eyes barely opened, and his ribs were painfully marked under his skin. "That one's not worth the trouble," said the caretaker when he noticed her interest. "He arrived 2 weeks ago, probably hit by a car. He doesn't eat well, has respiratory problems. We're waiting for the municipal veterinarian to authorize euthanasia." Those words provoked an internal revolution in Hope. She approached slowly and knelt in front of the cage. "Hello, warrior," she whispered in her Appalachian accent. The dog, as if understanding the respect in her voice, slightly raised his head and looked at her. It was just a moment, but their gazes connected in a silent promise. "I'm taking him," she announced with a determination that surprised everyone, including herself. The adoption process wasn't simple. The caretaker tried to dissuade her. The municipal veterinarian questioned her about her financial resources, and when she finally obtained the permits, she faced the refusal of her building's landlord. "No animals, miss, and especially not in that condition." But Hope didn't give up. She negotiated, begged, promised to take responsibility for any damage. In the end, with an additional deposit that consumed her savings of 3 months, she managed to take the dog home. She named him Miracle because that's what he represented, a second chance against all odds. The first days were critical. Miracle barely ate, his breathing was irregular, and his wounds were suppurating. Hope slept on the floor next to him, applied the treatments she had learned in class and in her community, and constantly talked to him, alternating between standard English and her mountain dialect. Little by little, Miracle began to respond. His gaze regained some brightness. He started eating regularly, and his wounds began to heal. Professor Harrison, impressed by her dedication, recommended she visit the West Side Veterinary Clinic, where a colleague of his could perform a complete checkup with modern equipment. "You have a scholarship, right? I'll talk to him to get you a discount." The clinic was another world. Located in one of the most exclusive areas of the city, its facilities looked more like a luxury spa than a veterinary center. Receptionists with impeccable uniforms, marble floors, and clientele dressed in designer clothes. Hope, with her simple dress and handmade sandals, immediately felt out of place. And Miracle, although much better than before, was still evidently a rescued dog, with visible scars and an insecure walk. The waiting room was almost empty when Hope and Miracle entered. The looks of disapproval were immediate. The receptionist, a thin woman with designer glasses, discreetly wrinkled her nose while registering their information. "Are you sure you can pay for the consultation?" she asked in a tone that mixed doubt and condescension. Hope nodded, tightly gripping Professor Harrison's letter of recommendation. While they waited for their turn, the main door opened with an elegant tinkle. A young woman approximately her age entered with a confident step, as if the whole world belonged to her. She wore brand-name clothes, discreet but expensive jewelry, and in her arms rested a small Pomeranian with immaculate fur. Hope recognized her immediately. Victoria Morgan, her university classmate, the one who never hid her contempt for hillbillies like her. Victoria also recognized her, but pretended not to until her eyes fell on Miracle. A mocking smile formed on her perfectly made-up face. Well, the hillbilly brought her pet? It looks more like a street rat with mange." The words, pronounced loudly enough for everyone to hear, provoked disguised chuckles. The receptionist didn't even try to hide her complicity. "You should have left it where you found it," Victoria continued while petting her pedigree dog. "You're contaminating the environment with that thing." Hope felt the heat rising in her cheeks. It wasn't the first time she faced humiliations, but each one hurt as if it were new. Miracle, sensing her distress, moved closer to her and rested his head on her lap. That gesture of loyalty, so simple but so profound, was all the response she needed. "My grandmother says that whoever despises the apparently weak is afraid of their own fragility," she responded in a low but firm voice. Victoria let out a theatrical laugh. "Your grandmother, the one who sells crafts in some lost market. Please don't make me laugh." At that moment, a nurse called Hope. The veterinarian, contrary to what she expected, treated her with professional respect. He examined Miracle thoroughly and recognized the progress in his recovery. "You've done an excellent job," he admitted while writing a prescription. "This dog was on the brink of eternal rest, and look at him now. He has an iron will, just like his owner, I imagine." Those words of validation meant more to Hope than any academic grade. When leaving the office, Victoria was still in the waiting room, now surrounded by 2 friends who had arrived. The 3 looked at her with disdain while whispering and laughing. Hope walked out with her head held high, but the damage was done. "That night," she cried while hugging Miracle, not because of the mockery, but because of the injustice of a world that judged by appearances. Months passed. Miracle's health improved remarkably, although the physical scars and the slight limp in his hind leg remained as reminders of his past. Hope continued to excel academically, combining scientific knowledge with the ancestral wisdom learned in her community. However, the derogatory comments didn't cease. Miracle became a symbol of constant mockery by Victoria and her circle, who didn't miss an opportunity to belittle them. The semester was about to end when the news arrived that would change everything. Hope's grandmother had fallen ill. Her mother's call, broken by the poor telephone signal and concern, was clear. Mrs. Dorothy needed care they couldn't afford. Hope didn't hesitate. She packed her belongings, requested a special permit from the university, and bought 2 bus tickets back to Kentucky, one for her and one for Miracle. The farewell with Professor Harrison was emotional. "I'll be back to finish my studies," Hope promised with determination. "This isn't a goodbye, but a see you later." The journey back to the Kentucky mountains was long but comforting, as the urban landscape gave way to fields and then to the imposing highlands. Hope felt she could breathe again. Miracle, peering out the bus window, seemed to share her feeling. The reception in the town was bittersweet. Everyone was happy to see the student, as they proudly called her, but the concern for Mrs. Dorothy overshadowed the reunion. The old woman, a respected figure for her knowledge of traditional medicine, lay weak in her bed. The doctors at the community clinic had diagnosed an illness that required specialized treatment in the state capital. With the savings she had left and the collective help of the town, Hope managed to transfer her grandmother to the hospital. While the old woman received treatment, she dedicated herself to working on whatever she could. She helped in the fields, sold crafts at the local market, and gradually began to treat animals for her neighbors. Her reputation as a half-veterinarian grew quickly. Although she didn't have a degree yet, her combination of academic and traditional knowledge proved effective. Mr. Frank, seeing the potential, decided to cede a part of his land for Hope to establish a small rural clinic. "Your grandmother will be proud when she returns," he told her as they marked out the space. "She always knew you would do something special." With borrowed hands and donated materials, the clinic began to take shape. It was modest but functional. A space for consultations, another for basic treatments, and an outdoor area for recovering animals. Miracle, now fully rehabilitated, became the official mascot of the place, receiving each patient that arrived with peculiar empathy. 2 years passed. Mrs. Dorothy, recovered although more fragile, returned to the town. Hope's clinic had grown thanks to community support and her own dedication. She had saved dozens of animals, from Mr. Ernest's cows to the rabbits at the elementary school. Her name was respected throughout the region. It was on a particularly violent, stormy night when the incident occurred that would change her destiny again. Rosie Mitchell, an 8-year-old girl, had gone out looking for her newborn calf that had gotten loose from the corral. The family, desperate, knocked on every door in town organizing a search. When they arrived at the clinic, Hope didn't hesitate. She put on her raincoat, took a flashlight, and whistled for Miracle, who immediately placed himself at her side, alert and willing. The rain fell relentlessly on the Kentucky mountains, turning paths into rivers of mud and slopes into slippery traps. The search group divided, but Hope insisted on going alone with Miracle. "He can smell what we cannot see," she explained while adjusting a red bandana to the dog's neck to make him visible in the darkness. Miracle, as if understanding the gravity of the situation, needed no further instructions. With his nose to the ground and ears alert, he began to guide Hope through paths that not even she, raised in these mountains, knew well. After 2 hours of tireless searching under the storm, when some were already talking about waiting until dawn, it was Miracle's bark that broke through the hopelessness. They had found Rosie huddled under a fallen tree, shivering from cold, with the calf protectively by her side. The little girl, hypothermic but conscious, smiled upon seeing the dog. "I knew you would come," she whispered as Hope wrapped her in thermal blankets. "My dad says you're the doctor who fixes everything broken." That night, Miracle became the hero of the town. The story spread like wildfire through neighboring communities. The rescued dog from Los Angeles who now rescued others. A week later, when Rosie had already recovered, a van with the Channel 7 News logo appeared at the entrance to the clinic. A young reporter, production assistants, and a cameraman descended from the vehicle. "We're looking for Hope Jenkins," announced the journalist. "We want to do a report on her rural clinic and the hero dog." Hope, surprised, barely had time to smooth her apron when the reporter presented herself before her. and then time seemed to stand still. Those eyes, that gesture, she recognized them instantly. Victoria Morgan, the same one who years before had humiliated her in the luxury veterinary clinic. But something had changed. She no longer wore ostentatious jewelry or designer clothes. Her makeup was natural, and her posture lacked its characteristic arrogance. Victoria also recognized her. For a moment, the uncomfortable silence said it all. Then, lowering her gaze, she spoke in a voice that Hope had never heard from her. Insecure, almost timid. "It's been years. I didn't expect to find you here," she said, while nervously playing with her microphone. I now work in social journalism. We heard about what you did, about the rescue of the girl, and about Miracle." At that moment, as if summoned, Miracle appeared trotting from the recovery area. He stopped short upon seeing Victoria. The reporter held her breath. The dog, now strong and healthy, although with visible scars, observed her with that penetrating gaze that seemed to pierce souls. Then, surprisingly, he approached and sat in front of her, as if evaluating her. "It's him," murmured Victoria. "The same dog from the clinic. I would recognize him anywhere by that star-shaped mark on his chest." The interview began formally, but the tension was palpable. Hope responded with professionalism about her clinic, the methods that combined traditional and modern medicine, the most memorable cases. Victoria, for her part, seemed genuinely interested, taking additional notes to the prepared questions. When the cameras were turned off for a break, Victoria asked to speak in private. In the small office adjacent to the clinic, the words began to flow like the rain on that rescue night. "There's no excuse for how I treated you," Victoria began. "I was cruel, superficial, unable to see beyond my privileges. I thought someone's worth was measured by their last name or bank account." Hope listened in silence, surprised not so much by the apology, but by the evident transformation in who had been her tormentor. "What changed?" she finally asked. Victoria took a deep breath. "Everything. My father went bankrupt. The prestigious Beverly Hills veterinarian lost his clinic due to poor management and hidden debts. Suddenly, we were nobody. My friends disappeared, doors closed. I had to leave the program in my 4th semester. I got a job as an assistant at a magazine and little by little made my way in journalism." She paused, emotions visibly on the surface. "But what really changed me was finding my personal hope." Faced with her host's questioning look, she continued. "A university professor, Michael Emerson, gave me a chance when no one else would. He didn't care about my past or my mistakes. He saw potential where I only saw failure. He taught me that true value is in getting up after falling, in rebuilding oneself, like your miracle." The tears that followed were genuine. Hope, raised in a culture where forgiveness was not just a word but a way of life, felt how the old resentment dissolved. "Some learn through love, others through pain," she said, repeating the words her grandmother used to say. "In the end, what matters is learning." The interview continued with a different tone. The story of Hope, Miracle, and the rural clinic was documented with a sensitivity that transcended the simple report. When asked about her future plans, Hope revealed that she had resumed her studies remotely and would soon obtain her official title as a veterinarian. "My dream is to expand the clinic, create a rehabilitation center for abandoned animals, and an education program so that the children of the community learn about responsible care." The report was broadcast a week later, and against all odds went viral. The story of the young Appalachian woman who had transformed her community and the rescued dog who now rescued others touched hearts. Social networks were flooded with supportive comments, and soon donations began to arrive from all over the country. 3 months later, Victoria returned to Kentucky. This time she didn't come as a reporter, but as a volunteer, accompanied by Professor Michael Emerson and a EO group of university students. They brought materials, medications, and above all, hands willing to work on the expansion of the clinic. During that time, Victoria and Hope developed an unlikely but genuine friendship. The girl who once despised the hillbilly and her street dog now learned Appalachian dialect, marveled at traditional medicine, and documented each success story for a book she planned to publish. The expansion of the clinic was progressing at a good pace when they received an unexpected visit. A man in a suit, evidently out of place in the rural environment, introduced himself as a representative of an international foundation dedicated to sustainable community projects. "We have been following your work, Miss Jenkins, and we are impressed. Our foundation wants to offer you complete funding to turn your clinic into a model center that can be replicated in other rural communities." The proposal included scholarships for local young people interested in veterinary medicine, an exchange program with foreign universities, and a permanent endowment of medical supplies. It was more than Hope had ever dreamed of. The inauguration of the Miracle Community Center was an event that brought together the entire town and attracted national attention. Government authorities, representatives of international organizations, and media gathered to witness the ribbon cutting. Hope, dressed in her traditional quilted vest and accompanied by an already aging but dignified Miracle, delivered a speech that alternated between standard English and her Appalachian dialect. "This center is not mine," she declared with a clear voice. "It belongs to the community that believed in a simple idea, that we all deserve a second chance. It belongs to my family, who sacrificed so I could study. It belongs to my professors who shared knowledge. It belongs to every hand that helped build it. And above all, it belongs to Miracle, who taught me that scars do not define our value, but our ability to heal." Among the audience, with tears in her eyes, Victoria Morgan applauded. Her article about Hope had earned her professional recognition, but more importantly, it had taught her a lesson that no university could impart. At the end of the ceremony, while people celebrated, Hope discreetly walked away with Miracle. They walked to the small hill that overlooked the town and contemplated their work. A modest but well-equipped building surrounded by newly planted young trees that would someday provide generous shade. "We did it," she whispered to the dog, while caressing his now gray ears. Miracle, as always, seemed to understand. He simply rested his head on the hand of the one who never abandoned him, as if to say, "I always knew you would."